is Horror Sucks, the podcast where we watch horror movies and tell you why they suck. I'm Ashley Atkins, a very tired gal. That's been overused.
Yeah, you are very tired. But you have used that.
All right.
I think last week, honestly.
No, last week I was a foe of chicken nuggets.
That's right.
This week I have an itchy foot.
Really killing it, huh? I'm Carter Rhodes, and I just finished watching the NFL draft, and boy, it is not great. It really is that, like, lie to yourself to believe that you don't have to wait another 5 months for football to start or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, this is interesting, when it's just a bunch of executives saying we think this player is gonna be good. And I don't watch college football, so none of that means anything to me. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the alternative is literally no football. So I guess I just take
you take your scraps and accept it.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. So this week, so in our timeline, we are recording this the week after Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. In your timeline, this is coming out a few weeks after we recorded this. So, which is interesting.
The next couple episodes, if I remember correctly, should be Sick, Coraline, and then this movie. Renfield is going to get thrown in there somewhere.
I think Renfield will be after this one. Unless you think it should go before
it might behoove us to bump it ahead a little bit, but that's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it.
Well, anyways, this movie is Beau is Afraid, which is the new Ari Aster movie. And so before we get started, Carter, do you have anything you want to say?
I mean, I already talked about the NFL draft. That's what's been on my mind.
All right, well, whatever. Okay, then we can get started.
Did you have something in mind?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes we riff at the beginning, and sometimes we don't.
Is the way you said it made me think I had forgotten something, like it was your birthday or whatever. But
no, I just was like, just wanted to make sure we had the space to chat if we wanted to chat pre-movie.
I will say I've been looking forward to this. Ari Aster is, I don't know that he's one of my favorite directors, but he is one of my favorite directors, and
me too.
I don't love all of his decisions, but I can certainly appreciate his movies. And that's why, even though I'm not a huge fan of surrealism, I was like, yeah, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
I feel like horror kind of needs clear lines just because so much of it is already, like, you're asking me to pretend that vampires exist, let's say.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. But I just am not okay with me having to pretend that vampires maybe exist. Just give me a little bit of boundary so I can build my, like, little understanding of this world. But since I like Ari Aster, I'm like, all right, I'll keep my mind open. I will also say, I believe I've mentioned it before, Midsummer is one of my sister's favorite movies, and she actually had the pleasure of celebrating Midsummer in Sweden with her friend.
Midsummer is one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. I really liked it. But anyways, before we get started, how this podcast works is that this week, Carter is going to give the plot of the movie. I'm going to give some fun facts. Then we will do our analysis in the good, the bad, and the spooky. Then we will wrap it up with our overall impressions, the Ralph Bones Memorial Line highlight, and our rating. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, this might be a rough episode because this was an incredibly complex movie with a lot to analyze, and I'm not sure I fully understood it, so
I think I have come to a place where I can say I understand it. Mm-hmm. I think there's definitely a lot that still is going over my head, but like I get a lot of the main themes and the main parts.
Mm-hmm. I honestly, in my personal life, probably wouldn't even say, like, definitively if it's a good or bad movie if someone asked me.
I have an opinion.
But, like, it's my job to tell you guys what I think of it. So I'm kind of forced here to come up with a decision, but it's... Anyway,
also, spoiler alert, there will be spoilers. Also, this was a 3-hour movie, so this might be a long plot.
It was actually
I know,
179
2 hours
minutes.
and 59 minutes.
It's interesting.
I know. It's only 8 minutes longer than Midsummer.
Yeah, but...
I was surprised by that.
Anyway, so I legitimately might read this plot word for word because it is such a complex plot that...
There's a lot happening.
Yeah, that, like, I honestly don't know if I can editorialize it and figure out what's important. And by the way, all of this is out of order in the movie. This is told in chronological order. Beau Wasserman is the son of a famous businesswoman, Mona. He grew up without a father, and his mother said that it was because his father died having sex with her, which was when Beau was conceived, and it was a hereditary condition that affected his grandfather and his great-grandfather, and basically she says, when you have sex, you're gonna die. Not in those words, but it was implied that this condition will kill him when he has sex. So he goes on a cruise with his mother, and he meets and falls in love with this girl named Elaine, and they promise to wait for each other, which I believe is implied to be sex, but anywho. Now, in present times, Beau is this anxious man living alone in I don't even know how to describe it, like Fox News themed liberal hellscape city where it's like Mad Max gangs are roaming the street killing all white men. It's just very over the top, like silly, exaggerated crime.
It's very exaggerated.
Mm-hmm. So his therapist prescribes him anxiety and tells him you have to take it with water.
He prescribes him anxiety medication.
Yeah. What did I say?
Just anxiety.
Oh, yeah. Well,
a little anxiety will really help bring
his
your
mother,
ego down.
in a sense, diagnosed or gave him the anxiety. But he's going to visit his mother, and he clearly has like a rocky relationship with her. But he accidentally sleeps through his alarm, and when he's packing, his keys and luggage seem to have been stolen. So he calls his mom, and she clearly doesn't believe him. She's like, yeah, whatever. And so he takes his medication and then discovers that there's no water in his house. And he said very clearly, always take with water. The medicine on it says always take with water in all caps. So he runs across the street to a convenience store and buys some water. And since he doesn't have his keys, he has to prop the door open. And immediately homeless people just swarm inside into his apartment and like throw a party and then lock him out.
A party is one way to phrase that.
A bash, really.
Yeah.
So he has to sleep outside, and the next morning he calls his mother, only to discover a UPS guy picks up the phone, and his mother has had her head just full on cut off by a falling ceiling fan.
Chandelier.
Yeah. So Beau goes to take a bath, sad about his mom, and he discovers there's just some dude hanging out on the ceiling. He falls into the tub with him, and they like wrestle. So he runs out in the street naked, and there's a naked stabber going around. They established that already.
The birthday boy stabber.
Yeah. So they mistake him for the birthday boy, and he gets hit by a truck. He wakes up 2 days later, and there's this couple that have been taking care of him. They're also caring for this army veteran named Jeeves, who is their son's army buddy before their son was killed in the line of duty. And they have a daughter named Tony. So Beau calls his mother's attorney, and the attorney says, I don't think it's explicitly stated that it's Jewish, but they like, his mother is supposed to be laid to rest as soon as possible. He has to have people sitting Shiva until she can be put to rest, but her last will was that she not be put to rest until Beau is there. So he's like, you got to get here as quickly as possible.
Do they say how much time had passed since he got hit with the car?
2 days, yeah.
Oh,
he slept for
okay.
2 days. So he goes to fly, but he can't because he's injured. So the doctor who healed him is like, I'll drive you. And eventually he has to renege on that. He has to, like, heal people because that's what doctors do. And his wife gives Beau some water with a napkin. And the napkin says, don't incriminate yourself. And he can't make any sense of that. I couldn't either. I still barely can. And the couple has a daughter named Tony. He's sleeping in her room. She absolutely fucking cannot stand Beau. Makes him smoke weed. And then eventually she tries to force him to drink paint with her. He doesn't do it, so she just drinks the paint. And she dies, and the couple is like, Jeeves, kill him. So he just sprints off into the woods. While there, he comes across this theater troupe called the Orphans of the Forest, and they put on a play about a man who spent his entire life looking for his family after they're separated by a flood. A man during that play goes up to Beau and claims he knew his father and that he's alive. But then the theater troupe is attacked by Jeeves and Beau runs into the woods. Eventually, Beau finally makes it to his mother's house. He's missed the funeral. Everyone's packed up. And a woman at some point enters, only for it to be discovered that it's Elaine. So they reconnect. And
his long lost love.
Yeah. They reconnect and they go to have sex in his mom's bed. And he knows that he's going to die, but he survives. And he's like, oh, that's nice. But Elaine died. And that's when you realize his dad died, but it was genetic from his mother's side. Because she just said your grandfather and your great-grandfather. We assumed that it was his father, his father's father, his father's father's father. But obviously, it would be his father, his mother's father, his mother's mother's father.
I didn't perceive that. I thought the mother was just lying, which I still think that.
Well, I would think that she was lying, except for the fact that then Elaine dies.
But how would she still be alive then? I think Elaine dying is just random.
What do you mean? If Mona was lying, then surely Elaine wouldn't have died. Nothing would have happened, right?
So Elaine dying is just further driving in the point that Beau cannot have a normal relationship because of the trauma he experienced. It is just a coincidence.
I don't think so.
I do.
It would be bizarre for his mother to be like, your dad died having sex with me, and out of sheer coincidence,
okay,
40-something years later.
But I think the mom was lying about the dad dying.
It's a bizarre thing. It's an insane coincidence for her to even say that, though.
That his dad died?
Yeah.
I think it was just a scare tactic to prevent him from having sex.
There's no way that, like, from an artistic perspective, there's no way that it was meant that she didn't say, if you have sex, you're gonna die, and then he has sex and the person around him dies. The significance,
it's passed down from his mom.
I see what you're.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
The significance of her dying was not a coincidence. It may not have been as, like, genetic, like I mentioned, but it was.
No, it's significant in the sense of, like, Beau can never truly have happiness. But I don't think that. I think it was intentional by the director. But
okay.
I don't think that to symbolize. But I don't think that whoever Beau had sex with would die. I think it is because it was Elaine that she had to die.
Maybe. In any case, After Elaine dies, Mona then appears and reveals that she was alive the whole time and that she actually hired his therapist, and he's been sharing info with her. So,
more than info, he has been giving her all the recorded sessions.
Yeah. So,
and the therapist just sits there with this stupid grin on his face.
At one point in the movie, Beau describes a dream that he has where he's in the bath and he's watching his mom yell at him, and his mom takes him to the attic and locks him there, and he watches as an outsider. So she reveals that that's actually a memory, yeah, not a dream, that he had a twin brother, and she locked him in the attic. So Beau goes, okay, I want to know who my father is. So she takes him to the attic, and that's where he sees his secret twin brother, who's still there, and his father, who's actually a giant penis-shaped monster. So that moment, Jeeves just breaks through the window and starts stabbing the penis, but it kills him. And that's that. So Beau then goes downstairs, gets into an argument with his mother, and ends up strangling her. And so he leaves, gets on a boat, and kind of just goes off into the night. But when he enters a cave, he finds himself in a arena where he's being put on trial by Mona and her lawyer, who are acting as prosecutors. And he has and they go through pretty much all of his sins that he's committed, mostly just him disrespecting his mother.
They go through his guilt.
Yeah. So there's a defense attorney. He gets pushed into the water and dies. And Beau tries to escape, but his feet are glued to the boat. And eventually the boat's motor explodes, and the boat flips over and drowns Beau. And then the credits silently roll as the crowd leaves the arena. And that's it.
Yeah. Honestly, that wasn't that bad.
It was that kind of disjointed, though.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into some facts. So the film was initially described... Oh, wait. So this movie is by Ari Aster, who is most known for Hereditary as well as Midsummer. This is his third movie. And this was supposed to be his directorial debut. This movie stars Joaquin Phoenix as Beau. And then we have Patti LuPone as older Mona, his mom. We also have Zoe Lister-Jones as young Mona. And you know her from New Girl. Mm-hmm. Patti LuPone has been in a ton of
Fawn
things.
Moscato.
Yes.
Councilwoman.
Yeah, Patti LuPone has been in a ton of things. You probably know her face. She's an incredible actor. Oh, you know Joaquin Phoenix probably from the most recently The Joker, but he's also been in a ton of things. Then you have Amy Ryan as Grace, and she is most known for The Office, as well as Only Murders in the Building. Then there is Nathan Lane as Roger, and he is most known for The Birdcage, as well as The Producers, Mouse Hunt, and Only Murders in the Building. He also was in Lion King.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was Timon, right?
I think so. And there's a bunch of other people, but those are the big ones. So, fun facts. So, the film was initially described by Ari Aster as a 4-hour-long nightmare comedy. The runtime of the theatrical cut is just 1 minute shy of 3 hours. So this movie is speculated to be an expansion of Aster's short film Beau, which came out in 2011, as well as the script was actually leaked in 2014, but it has been changed since then, but it was of the same title. It was initially meant to be released in 2020, but Aster decided to delay it because he's a perfectionist. Nathan Lane described this movie as the Jewish Everything Everywhere All at Once.
What's funny is that Ari Aster described it as the Jewish Lord of the Rings.
I was going to say that, yeah. Specifically, he said it's the Jewish Lord of the Rings, except he just goes home to his mom.
He also described it as if you pumped a 10-year-old full of Zoloft and sent him to get groceries.
Yes. So, on April Fool's Day, as an April Fool's Day prank, Aster and A24 played a prank on a bunch of people who thought they were getting the uncut version of Midsummer, but instead they played a preview of Beau is Afraid.
I legitimately might have walked out if Beau is Afraid went on, because especially since Midsummer had come out so long ago, I'd be like, yeah, Midsummer.
I would be so excited
like,
to see Midsummer again.
I don't want to see Beau is Afraid. Some prank. It's like if you go to a restaurant and order a pizza and then they just serve you onion rings. It's
yeah.
Okay. Doesn't really seem like a prank. Where's the joke?
All right. So Joaquin Phoenix had sharpened pins installed in his banded hand to poke him painfully if he tried to use it. Also, to stimulate the torso injuries he had paper binding clips clamped to his stomach to help facilitate a realistic limp. To promote the film, there were plans to show this film in place of a children's film to unsuspecting families in cinema, as had been done with Midsommar, but no cinema has agreed to do that ever again. And that is the end of my facts.
Yeah, that was bizarre. Again, it's like, to market our new fries, we waited until someone ordered a pizza, and then we served them these onion rings.
Like, I would be furious, though, because, well, I mean, this movie is about trauma, and they're just going to traumatize a bunch of children like that?
Yeah, I don't know what his deal is with kids. Like,
I don't know.
All right, so, are we good?
I'm ready for the good.
Let's get into the good.
Okay.
The good. Dun, dun, dun.
So, I really liked the themes that were presented in the movie, and I thought they were presented in a way that you really had to really look deep into the film to understand them, but I thought it was interesting, and I liked it. I really liked how anxiety was a big influence on Beau and his world, because part of the thing is, like, the world was so exaggerated, it almost is like kind of makes you question whether or not that's actually what was happening, or if it was not even like it was psychological, but not in a way of where like he's seeing things, it's just how he perceives them, especially. But I have a theory about the note that was passed under the glass. I don't think it was actually there. I think he was getting too comfortable and his anxiety said, check yourself, and stuff like that. So like that, I really liked that aspect of the movie. I also really liked the theme of trauma and abuse. The trauma was explicitly said. It was never fully stated that he was abused by his mother physically, although it's kind of implied. And I think it's interesting because this movie really shows like how trauma and abuse affects adults. Like trauma and abuse that happened as children, and what it leads to in an adult.
Before we get too far off topic, I really liked what you're saying about anxiety. Is the first section of the movie, it's told like episodically. There's him getting treatment for his anxiety, and then he gets hit by the bus, and that starts the next thing of him at the people's house, and then when he escapes, that starts the play thing, and then when that ends, it starts him with his mom, and then when that ends, it's his trial, and that's the movie. The first part, where it seemed like that was going to be what the whole movie was, it reminded me a lot of The Amusement Park by George Romero. Did you ever see that?
I haven't.
It's kind of like this strange movie essentially about dementia, but it's told like someone at an amusement park. And so I thought it was going to be like that for anxiety. Yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, like naturally, of course all of this is exaggerated. but then it's just kind of moved on to the next thing, and that was essentially this whole movie.
Yeah.
I take issue with the Jewish Lord of the Rings because the Lord of the Rings wasn't just like a series of barely related adventures. Is even aside from the fact that the entire franchise was about him approaching Mount Doom, there was still like a war happening,
Right.
and very like a coherent plot outside of this. This truly was just every section of this was surreal and not really.
They were all kind of detached a little bit. So one thing I forgot to mention in the fun facts is that recently Aster has been saying that his 3 movies that he's produced are a trilogy, and that this is the end of the trilogy.
Nonsense. Truly nonsense.
I was just kind of like, because he never meant it to be a trilogy, but when you look at it, I'm like, what?
It's just nonsense. They're not thematically related. The only thing I can possibly think of is that all 3 are vaguely related to family.
I think that is the connector in others' minds.
You can't.
But like, it's a big stretch.
Yeah. You can't just be like, I don't know. I can't think of an example. You can't just pick one thing that they have in common and call it a trilogy.
It's like saying pasta sauce and hot sauce are the same thing.
I mean, it's like saying a tomato and like carbonara sauce are the same thing.
They
It's
both
like,
go on pasta.
they can both go on pasta. That's not their purpose. So yeah, just truly nonsense. He's wrong. So
Anyways.
What's interesting is that this movie actually follows the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. Let me see if I can find the exact steps.
Okay.
Here we go. There's the departure, where the hero leaves the ordinary world behind.
Okay.
That would be when he... I'm looking at the 3-step version. The 12-step version's the interesting one.
Okay.
So there's the ordinary world. That would be... Admittedly, it's not very ordinary, but that's Beau's normal life. Mm-hmm. The call to adventure would be arguably either him going to visit his mother. I would say the call to adventure is his mother dying.
Right.
Refusal of the call, that was less prominent, but I would say that would be his turmoil a little bit about whether or not to visit his mother or him being hit by a car.
Yeah.
It can be a physical thing preventing him. Meeting the mentor, that would be probably, I would argue, that's the couple that took him in.
Yeah. There's
the crossing the first threshold. That would probably be when the girl died from drinking paint and he had to flee. And that was really when it did become like an adventure. Tests allies and enemies. That's just this whole movie. And then approach to the inmost cave. It's him arriving at his mother's house. The ordeal would be
the mother approaching him after Elaine died.
Right. The reward, or seizing the sword, so to speak, would either be him killing the mother or arguably having sex with Elaine. And the road back, resurrection, and return with the elixir are all more or less boiled down into him in the boat at the end.
They're coming to his guild. Yep. Yeah.
Granted, this isn't, like, there's a reason this exists, and it's because almost all adventure stories follow that pattern. But it's just not something you see a lot in modern movies. Star Wars follows it. That's why I consider Star Wars more of a fantasy than sci-fi.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue the one where it's approaching the cave?
Yeah.
I would argue that also might be the play. Because the play is Beau kind of thinking, fantasizing about like what normal life would be like for him, and him realizing that he can't have that.
Arguably, that's the mentor.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyways, though, this movie has just a lot going on, and I thought it was interesting. The way it was presented. It definitely had a lot. So the other thing that are we ready to move on to the next thing?
Yeah.
We've tackled all the themes. The acting in this movie was really superb.
The casting too.
The cast was incredible. Carter kept whispering, be like, who's that actor? Or be like, that's so and so from The Office. Like, yes, it was so good.
It had Holly from The Office. She was the woman who passed him the "Don't incriminate yourself."
Yeah,
and I don't know. She just looked very different.
Yeah,
almost didn't even recognize her.
I recognized her, but that's because she's also. I watched Only Murder in the Buildings.
Is she also married to Nathan Lane there?
She's not. No,
that would be funny.
She's actually the murderer in the first one.
Oh, don't spoil that.
Too bad.
I thought Nathan Lane being the husband was hilarious because Nathan Lane
I love Nathan Lane.
is very gay, and he actually, interestingly, there's an interview with him, Oprah, and Robin Williams because they were in some movie together, and Oprah asked him,
The Birdcage.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oprah said, what was like, did you find it hard to pretend to be a gay man in this movie? And Robin Williams stepped in and did some bit so he didn't have to answer the question because he's a good friend. So it's just very funny to me that he's playing the straight man because it immediately...
He plays the straight man quite a bit, but...
True, but especially towards the end of his career, he's become... He's
out and he's playing roles that he wants to play.
Yeah. It's like...
he played a gay man on Modern Family.
Pepper, right?
Yes. Yeah. Have you seen The Birdcage, though?
No.
Oh, it is one of the best movies.
Okay.
I'm serious. One of my favorite movies.
But in any event, his character, him as the husband really added a level of phoniness. Yeah. Because the characters were already over the top, hope you're feeling better, sport.
Yeah.
And they really felt phony. And so the fact that he was, it was I really did enjoy that. His casting was fantastic.
All of their casting was. It really was. Patti LuPone was impeccable. I mean, she always is, but I was oh, she really drove home the manipulative mother, the narcissist who just, it was so good. All of them were good.
I gotta look at Patti LuPone, I feel like she was the one of the Tammys in Parks and Rec, no?
I don't think so.
Maybe not. Okay, so it was a very funny movie.
Yeah.
As one of the after Beau was being healed by the doctor, he's like, by the way, you have distended testicles. And later in the movie, during the sex scene, you actually do see his giant balls.
So I watched a couple videos about this movie before this, and both of them were like, oh, it's because he hasn't had sex before. It's symbolic. And I'm like, sure, but it's also hilarious.
It's meant to be funny. They're ascribing too much meaning to it. They're describing the birthday boy stabbings, and the gimmick is that it's a killer who stabs people while he's naked. And they're like, the killer has been described as a circumcised male of the age of... It was a funny movie.
And then, of course, there was, the video of the birthday boy killer who just was full helicoptering. It was hilarious.
Yeah. It would, when he got hit by a car, it was funny because of how over-the-top violent it was. People are getting stabbed, he's getting shot at, running around naked, and then just hit by a bus. It was I laughed at it.
Yeah.
And then in the background there are posters, and there's just so much nonsense to it. There's a van that they're packing the stuff up at the mom's funeral. It's called like Shiva Steve's. There's a poster for a movie called Buttfinger. There's one that I believe said dead animal fuck stuff.
What was the sign on the door above the door on?
It was like Erectus Ejaculus or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It was a sex shop. We got to see Joaquin Phoenix's butt. That was nice.
We did.
Yep. I think we also did see his balls, but I don't think those were actually
those were not real.
The butt was almost certainly his. I'd be surprised.
I was genuinely surprised by the look of Joaquin Phoenix. And what I mean by that, he had like balding on top, like
thinning, really.
Yeah, thinning hair. Like it was, I genuinely was like, wow. They did a really good job just like making him look like this man who's troubled by constant worry. Like it was so good.
Mm-hmm. It was fantastic cinematography. Yeah. Ari Aster had some beautiful shots in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite liked the ending, which I believe is actually not taken, but pretty heavily borrowed from a movie.
Okay.
I don't remember the name, but it's like the Trial of Your Life or something. The concept is...
That's interesting.
The concept is you die, and then that's how you decide if you get to go to heaven. It's a trial where they go over your sins.
I liked the ending too. I thought it was very intense.
Yep.
It was I felt like all the action was building to that point, and it felt right.
Mm-hmm. It definitely fit thematically with Beau's character, which is something that I can't really say of all of the movie.
Yeah.
He definitely put himself on trial a lot. This is definitely how he must have felt, is everything he did just scrutinized and criticized, and that evidence that he is a terrible person, a bad son. That fit. Like, the beginning and the end fit. Everything was kind of bad.
Yeah. There was also, like, some foreshadowing in the beginning that I kind of didn't realize until now.
What do you mean?
When he was in the therapist office, and the therapist was like, oh, like, how do you feel about going to your mom's? And he's talking about stuff. He's like, oh, are you guilty? And he's like, no. And he writes on the paper, guilty. And I was like, yeah, I really didn't think about it much until now. But that's good foreshadowing where you kind of don't think about it, and then you look back and you're like, oh, like, I should have saw that coming. But yeah.
Yeah, also just throughout the movie, Beau doesn't make decisions.
Yeah.
And then him putting off those decisions end up making more trouble for him later. Like, he lost his bag and key when he looked at the floss, decided not to take it, and then decided to go back. Instead of making the decision then, it ended up costing him more later.
He couldn't decide what to do after he lost the keys and was on the phone with his mom being like, what should I do? And she's like, you'll make the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been pissed if that was the answer I got from my mom.
Yeah. So that's everything good I had to say about this movie.
Yeah.
The bad.
My biggest complaint about this movie is that it's not even really clear what the goal is until very, very late in the movie. I'm talking like the final 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't watching an adventure movie being like, I don't get the point. It really was just shit was happening to him for a while, and eventually he made it to his mom's house, and that was when I was like, oh, this has been what he's doing. It was the fact that it was surreal and so crowded meant that it was hard to even know what I was watching for a while.
Yeah, I agree. I genuinely felt like it was definitely too long. That is my biggest complaint. Mm-hmm. And lots of times, like, usually, like, yeah, it was too long. I don't know what I cut out. I do. It's the whole play scene.
Yeah,
I understand the purpose of that that whole scene, but, like, it kind of was unnecessary. Mm-hmm. It really didn't.
If you remove that, which I agree should be removed, it was a little unnecessary, it really removes more of the like adventure journey. Is he kind of just runs away and ends up in his mom's house.
Yeah. I think it could have been substituted for something that was much shorter and a little bit more compelling. Yeah. Honestly, at that play scene was when I really was like, I need to get going.
I was quite bummed to discover there was more after it.
I thought that was going to be the end. I thought, honestly, artistically, like, that could have been the end. It would have been weird, and I would have been like, wow, I think I would have a much different opinion about this movie if that was the end. But I was fully prepared for the movie to finish on that. Yeah.
Beau, as a character, like, just constantly suffering from decision paralysis, is just not interesting as a viewer. I can empathize with him, but, I mean, the most interesting I found the movie was in the beginning, and even then, he was decisive. Like, he took action. It was just really not interesting seeing the girls like, yeah, we'll take you for a ride. Here, smoke this weed. And he's like, okay.
The teen being so... Tony as a kid, I hated her.
Yeah.
She made no impact on the story whatsoever. I kind of understood, though, like, the fear of decision paralysis.
Yeah, I understood it. I just don't think it was interesting from a storytelling perspective.
I think that's fair. I think there could have been a couple of moments of decision paralysis. The whole movie was decision paralysis, and I think that's the issue with it.
Yeah, the episodes, I mentioned them, really didn't mesh well. It really felt like a bunch of unrelated short stories. And
kinda, yeah.
It just, they only barely related thematically too. It's just like how it affects his life, and then that ties into another thing I didn't care for, the surrealism, because first of all, this movie does not do it well. It doesn't like blur the lines between reality and surrealism. It just makes it confusing. And second, it removes one of the best parts of Ari Aster's directing, which is that he is able to portray very, like, mundane things in a good way. Like, Toni Collette going grocery shopping and running into someone to drive the plot along didn't drag. It was interesting.
Yeah.
We see
this movie
Peter in class, and that's not boring. Is just so it's so bizarre to me that he does this so well and decided to remove a strength of his.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of moments in this movie that was just like, not even dragging, but just like not compelling. That really took me out of it.
And then probably my biggest criticism of this movie is beyond the themes and what it's really about, it was pretty boring to watch. It's kind of what I was talking about with Beau as like a just constantly decision paralyzed character. It was just things happening to him.
I guess.
I felt like I was just watching a bad day in this dude's life. It wasn't interesting. Especially with how long it went on, too.
Yeah, by the end, I was really like... there was a moment in the theater where Carter and I were legit both checking our phones back and forth. Like, I would flip, Carter would flip. I was like, geez.
It went on for a while.
Yeah. One thing I really didn't like, I have some like specific things I really didn't like, but it was really hard to kind of pick up on a lot of the stuff that I now like. And that's because I had to go find it to understand it. For example, like, I liked the fact that it was an exaggerated world. You don't know what was actually really happening, but that's not something you pick up in the movie. That's just something you're like, afterwards you like can be like, oh yeah, okay. But it wasn't super, I don't know how to phrase it, but like it just wasn't, you didn't see that. You just kind of saw weird stuff. And that was a little challenging. Mm-hmm. I really hated the play. Yeah. I feel like that hasn't been stressed enough, but did not like that. Mm-hmm. It was like animated, but he wasn't animated, but then none of the people were. It just was bad.
Yeah.
I didn't like the penis monster. Yeah. It really didn't do anything for me. And I really didn't like the teens. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't like the fact that a lot of the stuff didn't get explained. For example, the note getting passed under the water.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we did know that she was recording him as her, like remember he turns on the TV and sees he's being recorded. Presumably that was his mother recording him. Oh. Although I suppose she could have also been referring to the end where he's being recorded, everything he does.
Huh. I didn't get that. Mm-hmm. That now it's making a lot of sense why she said don't incriminate yourself because you're being recorded.
It's very much a trial thing.
Interesting. But that's the thing with this movie is like that's a lot of stuff you don't pick up on right away.
I do think I think this is going to be a rather harsh review of the movie. I think once I have a little bit more time to digest it, maybe if I see it again, I think I might be kinder to it, but this is pretty much just my first viewing impression. And so again, I probably wouldn't have even formulated this opinion if it wasn't my job to come up with these.
I will say this, I would see it again.
I would see it again in my lifetime. I wouldn't.
Not within like the next year. No.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah. Anyways, all right. Let's do the spooky.
Okay. The spooky.
So for me, biggest spooky thing: the masks in the play creep me out. Mm-hmm. They were these white masks with the eyes, but then the mouth holes were cut out. But they just like those will haunt me for a little bit. I just don't like them.
There was only one scene with gore, which I think Ari Aster has the best gore of anyone.
I agree.
And there was only one scene, and it was when the dude got pushed. His defense attorney got pushed and fell on a rock.
It was essentially recreating Midsummer a little bit, but...
Yeah.
But, I mean, it worked. It works.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
The thing with Ari Aster and gore, what's so great about it is that it's just so sudden, and then it like starts and stops, and it's just so, like, abrupt.
It's also very...
It doesn't dwell on the fact that, like, of gore. It just kind of...
But he also doesn't use the traditional, like, gore effects. I'm not sure 100% what it is. I think he uses less blood. And I think that it being less liquid kind of freaks us out a little bit more, even if it might not be as biologically accurate.
But yeah, no, it's... That was a good scene where he just falls right on the rock. Mm-hmm. The other thing that freaked me out was the videotape of him. It spooked me. I don't know. All right. Overall impression.
I shared most of my thoughts already. I was hoping that it would end up being more like the amusement park, but for anxiety. It ended up being way more complicated, and in my opinion, worse than what that would have been, because that was a great start. On the surface, it was told kind of like scatterbrained almost, where we're told information at seemingly random intervals, where there's no real significance to when we're being given information, and that means that the, like, him not having sex because his mother said that he would die is like a big part of his character, and we had literally no way of knowing that. Not even foreshadowing until like halfway through the movie when she explicitly says that to him. And so that makes it, the fact that it's told like that makes it kind of hard to describe the plot on a surface level, and it's just way too cluttered for, in my opinion, for it to be good thematically. Is it just was a lot was happening all over the place. Again, maybe my opinion will change if I rewatch it, but
All right, here's my impression. I don't know if I can say it's good, but what I can say is I liked the movie. I liked the themes presented. I liked the thought that I'm now forced to think. And I liked a lot of the shots done, and I liked the imagery. And the acting was good. Do I think, do I have complaints about the movie? Yes, of course. Would I recommend people watch it? I don't think so. I don't think I can recommend it, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. So that's kind of my space of thinking. So, I want to see it again in my lifetime.
Yeah. So the Ralph Bones memorial line highlight is "Drink this paint with me," and then she calls him a pussy when he doesn't.
Yeah, it sounds about right. All right, what's your? Wait,
I gave it 3 penis monsters.
Interesting. Okay.
Again, I would have preferred not to give it. I would have preferred to digest it longer, but this is what fate has given us.
I'm gonna go pretty neutral and give it a 6. A 6. A 6 parts. 6 hours.
Yeah.
6 hours of 6 hours. Just that.
Yeah, that's definitely what it felt like.
It really did feel twice. I remember like looking at the movie started at 6:30. I remember looking at my phone at 8:15 being like, so we should be done pretty soon.
Yeah, it was dragging then. It was like when I first saw you check your phone, I was like, yeah, I'm starting to get a little sick of this. And it went on for another like hour and a half.
The thing is, like, there were, even when it was dragging, there were some compelling parts to it. It just really was too long. Yeah. All right. This episode wasn't as bad as we thought it would be.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe that's me redirecting all your mean thoughts.
Yeah. I think we'll make it up to you guys in the Renfeld episode. I think that's going to be fun.
That. Yeah.
I was talking to Janelle. Janelle's been on this podcast before. I believe she was in the Courage the Cowardly Dog, which, by the way, did way better than I thought any.
What numbers are we at for that?
I mean,
it's not interesting.
Slightly above average, which is better than I thought it was going to be. I thought people were going to see Scooby-Doo meets Courage.
Zombie Island also did really well.
But that's just Scooby-Doo Zombie Island, and it's like the most famous of the Scooby-Doos. I thought people would see straight out of nowhere Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog 2022 and think, yeah, no. But anyway, Janelle said it was pretty campy and fun, which...
Renfeld?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Surely has to be with, when
Cage.
you cast Nick Cage as the vampire.
It looks funny enough.
Yeah.
Which is how some people describe me. By some people, I mean Carter.
I've never said that.
You have said that my face.
I've never said you're funny enough. That's a lie. I've never said that.
No, you have erased it from your memory.
Maybe,
because we were outside. I was walking to my car and I was like, yeah, I was talking about how I'm not that funny and like whatnot about the podcast. And you were like, you're funny enough.
You know what?
It's
you know what?
back.
That does. I don't remember it, but I just can easily picture it. So
we cracked up laughing. It really was funny, but I will never let you live it down.
I'm not even sure it happened. I'm iffy.
We've already talked about it on the podcast at least 3 times.
I'm not calling you a liar anymore, but I'm just saying I don't remember it.
All right. I will accept you don't remember
Okay.
it. I will never forget it. It's fine. Anyways.
And with that,
All right. So, chronic. In this timeline, the next movie will probably be Renfeld. Yes. Timeline of the listeners.
I'm trying to figure out what you were trying to say chronically.
Chronologically.
Yes, that's it. God, you're giving me the brain rot. I was like,
Hey, I got there. I'm actually pretty proud of myself right now.
Yeah, that's something I didn't do. So,
All right. So the next movie for the listeners is Renfeld.
yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. And that sounds good to me. Well, thank you all for listening. I hope this wasn't too long. If you liked what you heard, feel free to give us a rating, maybe a review if you're feeling nice, or not. Although I would cry if you're not.
Please
But anyways,
give us a review.
or find us on YouTube, leave a comment. Although those also make me cry. And
It's messed up. Some of the stuff.
And yeah, check out our website, horrorsucks.com. Also, maybe share with your friends. And yeah.
Stay spooky.
Great. Horror Sex is brought to you by Wild Thing Media. Production done by me, editing done by Carter. Thanks.
Stay spooky.